Dylan understands me better than you ever did. That was the sentence that ended 16 years of marriage, though my wife Claire did not know it when she said it. I was standing in the back hallway of our house in Westerville, Ohio, still wearing my steel-toe boots, my work jacket damp from a cold October rain, a cardboard box of takeout pizza balanced in one hand like some sad little peace offering. The kitchen light spilled across the floor in a thin yellow line, and on the other side of that doorway, Claire was laughing with her friends over speakerphone, relaxed in a way she had not sounded with me in years. My name is Nathan Brooks. I was 42 years old, a maintenance engineer at a manufacturing plant 28 miles outside Columbus, the kind of man who knew how to fix a broken furnace at midnight, replace a transmission sensor on a Saturday morning, and keep a mortgage paid even when overtime chewed through my bones. I was not exciting. I knew that. I did not wear linen shirts, quote therapy podcasts, or tell women they were misunderstood galaxies trapped in ordinary lives. I packed lunches in plastic containers. I checked tire pressure before road trips. I remembered when the property tax bill was due. For a long time, I thought that was love in its most honest form. Then I heard my wife say another man made her feel alive. One of her friends asked, laughing, "Then why are you still with Nathan?" There was a pause, the soft clink of glass against granite, and Claire answered, "Because Nathan is stable. Dylan is alive." I did not move. Rainwater slipped from my sleeve and tapped the hardwood near my boot, once, twice, 3 times, like a clock counting down the last seconds of the man I used to be. The pizza box grew warm against my palm. My wedding ring felt tight, not because my finger had changed, but because something inside me had finally stopped making room for it. I wanted to burst through that doorway and demand an explanation. I wanted to ask who Dylan was, how long he had been listening to the parts of my wife she no longer trusted me with, whether he knew I had once worked double shifts to pay off her student loans, whether he knew I sold my father's old Mustang to cover the down payment on the very kitchen where she was now turning me into a punchline. But I did none of that. Men like me spend a lifetime learning how to hold a line. At work, you do not panic when a conveyor belt locks up. You shut the system down, find the failure point, and keep your hand steady. So I stood there, breathing slowly, letting her words settle where they needed to settle. Then I pushed the kitchen door open. Claire looked up, startled, her wine glass halfway to her mouth. The laughter on the phone thinned into silence. I set the pizza on the counter, looked at the woman I had been fighting for alone, and said, "Then I will stop fighting for a woman who already chose an audience." The phone speaker went dead before Claire could find the right face to wear. For a second, she just stared at me across the kitchen island, her lips parted, her hand still wrapped around the stem of that wineglass like it was the only solid thing left in the room. I had seen Claire handle angry clients, boardroom pressure, medical bills, family emergencies, even her mother's sharp little comments at Thanksgiving. She always knew what to say. That night, she did not. "Nathan," she said slowly, like my name was a password she hoped would open the old version of me, "you were not supposed to hear that." I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny left in my chest. "No," I said. "I do not think I was." The refrigerator hummed behind her. Rain ticked against the window over the sink. The house smelled like basil, wet wool, and expensive red wine, and somehow that ordinary mix made the whole moment feel worse. She set the glass down too carefully. "It was just talk. Women vent. You know that." There it was, the first patch of paint over the crack. Just talk. Just venting. Just another little bruise I was supposed to call a misunderstanding so we could sleep under the same roof and pretend morning would wash it clean. I looked at the pizza box on the counter. Extra cheese, green peppers on half, because Claire hated them and I still remembered. That small detail felt embarrassing now, like showing up to a house fire with a birthday candle. "I am going upstairs," I said. Her expression changed then. Not fear, exactly. More like irritation dressed up as concern. "Do not be dramatic." I walked past her without answering. The stairs creaked the same way they had creaked for 12 years, second step from the top, then the landing board near the linen closet. I knew every sound in that house because I had fixed half of it with my own hands. In the bedroom, I pulled the old canvas duffel from the closet shelf. It still had dust on it from our last trip to Tennessee, when we drove 8 hours because Claire wanted mountain air and I wanted to believe fresh scenery could help two people remember each other. I packed work jeans, undershirts, socks, my shaving kit, phone charger, laptop, passport, birth certificate, and the folder where I kept insurance papers and truck registration. I did not slam drawers. I did not throw clothes. The quiet was not weakness. It was inventory. Claire stood in the doorway watching me, arms folded tight. "Where are you going?" "Somewhere I am not being used as furniture." Her eyes flashed. "That is unfair." I zipped the duffel. The sound cut through the room clean and final. What was unfair was making me the dependable part of your life while another man got the honest version of you. She looked away first. That told me more than an apology would have. Downstairs, my phone began buzzing before I even reached the front door. Her name filled the screen, then disappeared, then filled it again. I stepped out into the rain, crossed the driveway, and climbed into my grey Ford F-150. The cab smelled like coffee, sawdust, and the peppermint gum I kept in the console. I sat there for a moment with both hands on the steering wheel, watching the warm lights of my own house blur through the windshield. For 16 years, I had believed leaving meant losing. That night, as I backed into the street and drove toward the cheap motel off Route 3, I realized staying had been costing me more than I could measure. The motel sign flickered red and blue against the wet pavement like a tired heartbeat. Vacancy buzzed above the office door, half the letters dim, the kind of place you drive past 100 times and only notice when your life has nowhere else to sleep. I paid for one night with a debit card that had both our names on it and felt the clerk glance at my wedding ring, then at the duffel over my shoulder, then back to the tiny television behind the counter. He had seen this kind of check-in before. Room 214 smelled like lemon cleaner, old carpet, and air that had been trapped too long. The bedspread was stiff. The heater clicked every few minutes like it was arguing with itself. I set my bag on the chair, placed my keys beside the sink, and stood there in the yellow bathroom light looking at a man I barely recognized. My work shirt was wrinkled. My eyes were red around the edges. Rain had dried in dark patches across my jacket. I looked less like a husband and more like someone who had walked out of a burning building with only the things he could carry. My phone started buzzing again before I even took off my boots. Claire. Then Claire again. Then a text. "Where are you?" Another. "This is childish." Another. "Come home so we can talk like adults." I stared at the screen until the words blurred into shapes. There was a time I would have answered on the first ring. I would have explained my pain carefully, politely, like a man applying for permission to be hurt. I would have asked her to understand what she had done to me. That was the trap. I had spent years trying to make her feel the weight of things she was comfortable stepping over. I put the phone face down on the nightstand. The silence that followed felt unnatural, almost dangerous. Any man who has held a marriage together by force of habit knows that silence can feel like failure at first. You feel the pull in your chest. Apologize first. Smooth it over. Go back before the whole thing becomes real. I sat on the edge of the bed with my elbows on my knees and let that pull come. Then I let it pass. Outside, tires hissed along the frontage road. Somewhere down the hall, an ice machine groaned. I took off my ring and set it beside the motel notepad. The circle of pale skin underneath looked smaller than it should have, a quiet little mark left by 16 years of trying. I did not hate Claire in that room. That would have been simpler. Hate gives you heat. What I felt was colder. It was the sick clarity of realizing someone had been enjoying your loyalty while auditioning your replacement. Around midnight, my phone lit up with a longer message. "Nathan, I said something stupid. Dylan is just someone who listens. You are making this bigger than it is." I read it twice. Not because I believed it, but because I wanted to study the shape of her first defense. She did not say she was sorry for humiliating me. She said I had made it large. I walked to the sink, splashed cold water on my face, and looked at myself again. The old Nathan wanted to call. The new one reached for the motel Bible drawer instead, not because I was looking for a verse, but because I needed something heavier than my phone in my hand. By 2 in the morning, the messages slowed. By 3, they stopped. I lay on top of the covers in my jeans, staring at the ceiling while the heater clicked and clicked. I did not sleep much. But somewhere before dawn, in that cheap room off Route 3, I made the first clean decision I had made in years. I was done begging to be chosen inside my own marriage. At 6:15 in the morning, the motel room looked even worse in daylight. The carpet had stains the night had been kind enough to hide, the curtains glowed orange around the edges, and the coffee packet by the sink tasted like warm cardboard and regret. I showered under weak pressure, shaved with a disposable razor that scraped more than it cut, and put on the least wrinkled shirt from my duffel. Work did not care that my marriage had cracked open. Machines still failed. Orders still shipped. Men still clocked in because bills did not pause for heartbreak. I drove east toward the plant with grey light spreading over the fields, my truck tires humming over wet asphalt, my phone sitting silent in the cup holder like a witness refusing to testify. By 7:30, I was inside the maintenance bay at Franklin Precision Components, surrounded by forklifts, metal shelving, hydraulic fluid, and the steady language of things that could actually be repaired. A conveyor motor had been overheating on line 4, and for 2 hours I let the work take my hands hostage. Wrenches, gauges, voltage readings, replacement belts. There is mercy in a problem with clearages. Either the circuit carries power or it does not. Either the bearing turns clean or it grinds. Marriage is crueler. It can fail quietly for years while every light in the house still turns on. Around 10, I stepped outside near the loading dock with a paper cup of coffee and finally checked my phone. 9 missed calls from Claire. For texts. 1 voicemail I did not play. Then I saw another name lower on the screen. Megan Foster. Claire's friend. Not the loud one from parties, not the one who smiled too hard and measured men by what they drove. Megan was quieter, a high school counselor with tired eyes and a habit of listening more than speaking. Her message was only 5 words. Nathan, please call me today. My stomach tightened in a way the cold air could not explain. I almost ignored it. I was not in the mood to be scolded by one of Claire's friends about communication, emotional availability, or whatever phrase they were using that month to make neglect sound educated. But something about those 5 words felt different. No accusation. No performance. Just urgency. I called from beside the loading dock while semi-trailers backed into place and the morning wind pulled at my jacket. Megan answered on the second ring. For a moment, all I heard was her breathing. Then she said, "I am sorry. I should have spoken sooner." Those 7 words changed the temperature around me. I looked across the employee lot at my truck, at the dried rain on the hood, at the life I had driven away from less than 12 hours earlier. Spoken about what? I asked. She exhaled slowly, like she was choosing between loyalty and decency and hated that the choice had taken this long. Claire has not just been venting. She has been building a story. I said nothing. The silence gave her room, and the room filled fast. Megan told me Claire had been talking about separation for months, not as a tragedy, but as a strategy. She had described me as emotionally unavailable, old-fashioned, too practical, too predictable, a man who paid bills but did not understand her soul. The words sounded polished, rehearsed, like they had been tested in front of mirrors and over glasses of wine. Then Megan said the name I already knew was coming. Dylan. He had been around since spring, first as a branding consultant on one of Claire's projects, then as a coffee meeting, then as the person who understood her dreams better than anyone. Megan's voice shook when she added, "She met with a divorce attorney 3 weeks ago, Nathan. She said if you left first, it would make things easier for her." The loading dock noise faded until all I could hear was the blood moving in my ears. I did not feel surprised. That was the strange part. I felt confirmed. Like a mechanic finally finding the cracked hose that had been leaking pressure the whole time. Megan offered to send screenshots. Dates. Messages. Nothing dramatic, nothing stolen, just conversations Claire had willingly put into the world because she never thought the man she called stable would stop being useful. I thanked Megan, and my voice sounded calm enough to belong to someone else. When the call ended, I stood there in the Ohio wind with my coffee going cold in my hand. The pain was still there, but it had changed shape. It was no longer a fog. It had edges now. And a man can work with edges. By noon, Megan's screenshots were sitting in my email like neatly stacked bricks, each one plain on its own, heavy when gathered together. Claire complaining that I was practical but not passionate. Claire saying I made her feel managed instead of seen. Claire telling Megan that Dylan understood the version of her she had buried to become someone's wife. Then the line that made my coffee turn bitter in my mouth. If Nathan walks out first, it will look better for me. I read it once, then printed everything from the office printer beside the maintenance cage, the same machine we used for equipment logs and safety forms. The pages came out warm, sliding into the tray with a soft plastic whisper. Proof never looks dramatic when it first arrives. It looks like paper. It looks like dates, timestamps, and words people thought would never leave a private screen. I clocked out at 3:30, not early enough to draw attention, not late enough to give myself time to lose nerve, and drove downtown to a brick office building near High Street where divorce attorneys, dentists, and accountants shared the same tired elevator. The directory listed Howard Keene on the 3rd floor. Family law. Mediation. Property division. The words felt cold, but cold was better than chaos. His office smelled like black coffee, old wood, and copy toner. Howard was in his late 50s, silver hair, rolled sleeves, no flashy watch, no courtroom smile. He shook my hand once and pointed me to a chair. "Tell me what happened, Mr. Brooks," he said. "Not tell me how you feel. Not tell me why she did it. What happened?" That difference mattered. I started with the kitchen, the speakerphone, Claire's words, the motel, Megan's call. My voice stayed level until I said Dylan's name. Then it tightened for half a second, just enough for Howard to notice and kind enough for him not to mention. He took notes on a yellow legal pad, slow and precise. When I handed him the printed messages, he adjusted his glasses and read without expression. Attorneys have a way of making disaster feel organized. After 10 minutes, he looked up and said, "This is not a war. This is a process. Your job is to stop reacting and start documenting." That sentence landed harder than any comfort could have. He asked about the house, the mortgage, retirement accounts, vehicles, joint credit cards, insurance, and the checking account where my direct deposit landed every other Friday. I answered as best I could. The house was in both names. The truck was mine. Her SUV was still being paid from our joint account. We had a savings account, a home equity line, 2 credit cards, and 16 years of financial rope tied around both our ankles. Howard tapped his pen once. "Do not drain accounts. Do not cancel necessary utilities. Do not threaten. Do not argue over text. Open a separate account for your paycheck going forward. Keep records. Communicate in writing when possible. Calm people make better evidence." I almost smiled at that, not because it was funny, but because calm was the only thing I had left that Claire had not borrowed. Before I left, he had me forward the screenshots, the motel receipt, my work schedule, and the messages Claire had sent overnight. He told me to gather tax returns, mortgage statements, retirement summaries, insurance documents, phone records, and anything showing I had not abandoned the marriage but removed myself from a hostile situation. Hostile. The word sat in the room like a verdict wearing a suit. I drove back to the motel through downtown traffic with a manila folder on the passenger seat and a strange steadiness in my chest. Pain was still there. So was grief. But now they were no longer driving. By the time the sun dropped behind the grain silos west of town, I had opened a new checking account, changed my direct deposit, scanned every document I had, and placed my wedding ring inside a small envelope from the motel desk. On the front, I wrote one word in black pen. Later. Because some things do not need to be decided in the fire. Some things wait until a man can see clearly enough to choose himself. The first week away from the house did not feel like freedom. It felt like learning how to walk through my own life without touching the walls. I went to work, came back to room 214, ate microwave dinners with plastic forks, and slept in a bed that never learned the shape of me. Claire kept texting, but her words changed as the days passed. First she was angry. Then offended. Then soft. Then angry again. It was like watching weather move across a lake, dramatic from a distance but useless if you were already soaked. I answered only when Howard told me to, short, polite, written like every message might one day sit under a courtroom light. I am safe. I need space. Please communicate by text or email. No accusations. No speeches. Just lines clean enough to stand on their own. But the quiet hours were harder. That was when memory came in without knocking. I remembered Claire at 23, sitting across from me in a campus diner with a strawberry milkshake and a stack of marketing textbooks, laughing because I had grease under one fingernail no matter how hard I scrubbed. Back then, she liked that I worked with my hands. She said I made the world feel solid. We married young, not foolish young, but hopeful young, the kind of young that believes love is a truck with a full tank and a map folded in the glove compartment. Our first apartment was above a laundromat in Dayton. The windows rattled when delivery trucks passed. The shower ran cold after 7 minutes. We ate spaghetti twice a week because pasta stretched farther than pride. Claire would study at the kitchen table while I came home from second shift with my boots in my hand so I would not wake the neighbors below us. I thought those nights were hard. Looking back, they were some of the cleanest years we ever had. Nobody had much, so nobody could pretend money was love. Then life started asking for more. Claire wanted her degree finished without drowning in loans, so I picked up weekend maintenance calls. Emergency furnace repairs in February. Apartment complex plumbing at midnight. Industrial inspections on holidays when other men were home carving turkey. I told myself every hour I gave away was buying us a future. When she landed her first rail marketing job, I bought her a navy blazer from Macy's and told her she looked like she belonged in every room she walked into. She cried in the dressing room. I remember that more clearly than our wedding cake. Years later, when her thyroid surgery was scheduled at Riverside, I slept in a vinyl chair beside her hospital bed for 2 nights, waking every time a nurse checked the machine. She squeezed my hand and whispered that she felt ugly with the bandage on her neck. I told her she was still the prettiest woman in Ohio. I meant it. When we bought the Westerville house, the bank wanted more down than we had. I sold my father's 1969 Mustang, the last thing he left me that still smelled faintly like him when the sun warmed the seats. Claire promised we would buy it back one day. We never did. Instead, we bought hardwood floors, a new roof, her SUV, a kitchen island where 16 years later she would laugh about another man understanding her better. That was the part that kept returning to me in the motel room, not as rage, but as a slow, heavy truth. The man she called boring was the reason her life never had to fall apart. I had mistaken being needed for being loved, and I had worn that mistake like a wedding ring. 2 Fridays after I left, Howard told me I could return to the house to collect personal documents as long as I kept it clean, brief, and documented. Claire was at work downtown, according to the shared calendar she had forgotten to remove me from, presenting a quarterly campaign review at 10 in the morning. I parked in the driveway at 9:42 with my phone recording audio in my shirt pocket, not because I wanted drama, but because I had learned that memory is too fragile when someone else is already writing a story around you. The house looked the same from the outside. Grey siding. White trim. Maple tree dropping yellow leaves across the lawn I had fertilized every spring. The porch light was still on even though the sun was up, something I would have fixed without thinking 2 weeks earlier. Inside, the air was too still. Our home had a sound I never noticed until it was gone, the low pulse of shared life, a television in another room, the dishwasher running, Claire humming while she searched for her keys. Now it was just a house full of furniture holding its breath. I went straight to the office and opened the file cabinet. Tax returns. Mortgage statements. Retirement summaries. Vehicle titles. Insurance policies. I placed each folder into a banker box and photographed the drawer before and after, just like Howard told me. Process over panic. Records over reaction. Still, the room kept pulling my eyes toward the small things. The coaster Claire bought in Nashville. The framed photo from our 10th anniversary in Traverse City. The ceramic mug that said "World's Okayest Husband," a joke from better years when jokes still landed softly. I did not touch any of it. Then I walked into the bedroom for my birth certificate copy and the watch my father had worn on Sundays. That was when I saw the book. It was on Claire's nightstand, half hidden beneath a folded scarf, the kind of placement that wants to look casual and fails. The cover was cream-colored with gold lettering. The Courage to Choose Yourself. I stood there for a long moment, because the title alone felt like a small insult dressed up as wisdom. I picked it up with the care you give something that might stain your hands. A card slipped out and landed face up on the carpet. The handwriting was not Claire's. Smooth, confident, practiced. When you are ready to stop pretending, I am here. Dylan. No hearts. No cheap confession. Nothing a judge would call scandalous by itself. That was what made it worse. It was emotional furniture, set quietly in the room I used to sleep in, proof that another man had not entered my marriage through a locked door. He had been invited in, given a chair, and asked to stay while I kept paying for the roof. I photographed the card, the inside cover, the nightstand, and the calendar on the dresser showing the date. My hand stayed steady until I placed the book back exactly where I found it. Then I noticed the second thing, a small receipt tucked under the lamp. 2 coffees, 1 herbal tea, 1 slice of lemon cake, charged at a cafe in Columbus on a Saturday. Claire had told me she was at yoga. I took a picture of that too. Not because coffee was a crime. Because lies rarely arrive wearing name tags. They show up as tiny ordinary things in places they should not be. Before leaving, I stood in the doorway of our bedroom and looked at the bed, the curtains, the wedding photo on the dresser. For years, I thought betrayal had to be loud to be real. That morning taught me otherwise. Sometimes it is a bookmark, a receipt, a sentence written in blue ink, and the quiet knowledge that your place in your own life has already been offered to someone else. Claire chose a Sunday dinner to try to take control of the story. That was always her gift, turning a room into a stage and making everyone feel lucky to have a seat. She texted me through email first, because I had stopped answering calls, saying her parents wanted peace, her sister would be there, and maybe we could all sit down like mature adults before attorneys made everything ugly. Howard told me I did not have to go. Then he paused and said, "But if you do, take nothing you cannot afford to have repeated, and say nothing you cannot defend tomorrow morning." So I went. Not to save the marriage. Not to punish her. I went because Claire had spent weeks describing me as a man who walked away, and I wanted one room of people to hear the truth while I was still calm enough to speak it. Her parents lived in a brick colonial outside Dublin, with a flag by the porch and a dining room that smelled like roast chicken, butter rolls, and furniture polish. Her father, Martin, met me at the door with the stiff handshake men use when they have already chosen a side but still want to look fair. Her mother, Elaine, hugged Claire too long and looked at me like I was a weather event that had ruined the weekend. Claire's sister, Alison, sat near the window with her arms folded, and Megan was already there, quiet at the end of the table, her eyes meeting mine for 1 second before dropping to her water glass. That told me Claire did not know what Megan had done. Dinner started politely, which made it worse. Martin asked about work. Elaine asked if I was eating enough, in the same voice people use for stray cats. Claire wore a cream sweater and no wedding ring, though the pale mark on her finger had not faded yet. Halfway through the meal, she placed her fork down and sighed like a woman carrying unbearable grace. "I did not want it to happen like this," she said. "Nathan left the house, and I have been trying to understand why he shut me out instead of fighting for us." There it was, wrapped in sadness and served beside mashed potatoes. The old me would have defended himself too quickly. The old me would have sounded guilty even while telling the truth. I wiped my mouth with the napkin, set it beside my plate, and looked first at Claire, then at her parents. "I did not leave because I stopped caring," I said. "I left because I heard my wife tell a room full of people that I was useful, but another man made her feel alive." Claire's face tightened. Elaine blinked. Martin looked down at his plate. I took the manila folder from the empty chair beside me and placed it on the table. I did not slide it dramatically. Paper does not need theater. I am not here to embarrass anyone. I am here because I will not let abandonment become the first lie in a legal record. Claire's voice sharpened. "You brought documents to my parents' house." "No," I said. "I brought dates." I opened the folder and laid out the emails from Megan, the screenshots Claire had sent to her friends, the cafe receipt from Columbus, the photo of Dylan's note, the motel receipt from the night I left, and a copy of my work schedule. Nothing explicit. Nothing cruel. Just a timeline clear enough to make performance unnecessary. Megan finally spoke, her voice soft but steady. "Claire, I am sorry, but you told us you wanted him to leave first. You said it would make the divorce cleaner for you." The room went so still I could hear the ice settle in Allison's glass. Claire looked at Megan like betrayal had just entered from the wrong direction. For the first time all evening, she had no polished answer. Martin removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Elaine whispered Claire's name, not as comfort, but as discovery. I closed the folder. "I did not abandon my marriage," I said. "I stopped funding my replacement." No one spoke after that. Claire's eyes filled, but tears came too late to rewrite a sentence she had already written herself. I stood, thanked her parents for dinner, and walked out before anyone could turn truth into negotiation. Outside, the November air was cold enough to sting, and for the first time in weeks, it felt clean. Claire chose a Sunday dinner to try to take control of the story. That was always her gift, turning a room into a stage and making everyone feel lucky to have a seat. She texted me through email first, because I had stopped answering calls, saying her parents wanted peace, her sister would be there, and maybe we could all sit down like mature adults before attorneys made everything ugly. Howard told me I did not have to go. Then he paused and said, "But if you do, take nothing you cannot afford to have repeated, and say nothing you cannot defend tomorrow morning." So I went. Not to save the marriage. Not to punish her. I went because Claire had spent weeks describing me as a man who walked away, and I wanted one room of people to hear the truth while I was still calm enough to speak it. Her parents lived in a brick colonial outside Dublin, with a flag by the porch and a dining room that smelled like roast chicken, butter rolls, and furniture polish. Her father, Martin, met me at the door with the stiff handshake men use when they have already chosen a side but still want to look fair. Her mother, Elaine, hugged Claire too long and looked at me like I was a weather event that had ruined the weekend. Claire's sister, Allison, sat near the window with her arms folded, and Megan was already there, quiet at the end of the table, her eyes meeting mine for 1 second before dropping to her water glass. That told me Claire did not know what Megan had done. Dinner started politely, which made it worse. Martin asked about work. Elaine asked if I was eating enough, in the same voice people use for stray cats. Claire wore a cream sweater and no wedding ring, though the pale mark on her finger had not faded yet. Halfway through the meal, she placed her fork down and sighed like a woman carrying unbearable grace. "I did not want it to happen like this," she said. "Nathan left the house, and I have been trying to understand why he shut me out instead of fighting for us." There it was, wrapped in sadness and served beside mashed potatoes. The old me would have defended himself too quickly. The old me would have sounded guilty even while telling the truth. I wiped my mouth with the napkin, set it beside my plate, and looked first at Claire, then at her parents. I did not leave because I stopped caring, I said. I left because I heard my wife tell a room full of people that I was useful, but another man made her feel alive. Claire's face tightened. Elaine blinked. Martin looked down at his plate. I took the manila folder from the empty chair beside me and placed it on the table. I did not slide it dramatically. Paper does not need theatre. I am not here to embarrass anyone. I am here because I will not let abandonment become the first lie in a legal record. Claire's voice sharpened. You brought documents to my parents' house. No, I said. I brought dates. I opened the folder and laid out the emails from Megan, the screenshots Claire had sent to her friends, the cafe receipt from Columbus, the photo of Dylan's note, the motel receipt from the night I left, and a copy of my work schedule. Nothing explicit. Nothing cruel. Just a timeline clear enough to make performance unnecessary. Megan finally spoke, her voice soft but steady. Claire, I am sorry, but you told us you wanted him to leave first. You said it would make the divorce cleaner for you. The room went so still I could hear the ice settle in Allison's glass. Claire looked at Megan like betrayal had just entered from the wrong direction. For the first time all evening, she had no polished answer. Martin removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Elaine whispered Claire's name, not as comfort, but as discovery. I closed the folder. I did not abandon my marriage, I said. I stopped funding my replacement. No one spoke after that. Claire's eyes filled, but tears came too late to rewrite a sentence she had already written herself. I stood, thanked her parents for dinner, and walked out before anyone could turn truth into negotiation. Outside, the November air was cold enough to sting, and for the first time in weeks, it felt clean.